Welcome, everyone, and many thanks to Andrew, to Carolyn, the AMBA and BGA teams for bringing us all together to Berlin for another fantastic, inspiring, fascinating, and wonderfully organized conference. With my colleague, Kate Mowbray from BlueSky Education, we're delighted to be here with all of you. Now, final session of the day. And before that delicious dinner at the Orangerie in Charlottenburg, we're discussing how business schools, what was our title? How business schools can uphold core values in the face of global uncertainty. That's putting it mildly, isn't it? Now, I was thinking 5:15, 5:30, there'll be 10 of us, and we just sit around in a circle. My name is Matt Symonds. I'm the CEO of BlueSky Education. It's the world's leading communications and consulting agency dedicated to business education. We work with the senior leadership, the staff, faculty, alumni of over 60 of the world's top business schools across Europe, the rest of the world, including many institutions that are attending here in Berlin. Now, some of our clients are ranked among the top 5 in the FT. Other clients are ranked in the top 55, and there are others, if the FT went that far, that might be in the top 155. But whatever their ranking, they all share a strong sense of purpose. They all involve diverse stakeholders. They all face multiple challenges, and they all have their own sets of values. So whether you're a dean, a president, a CEO, director, you are the moral compass of your institution. Now, I feel privileged to have this opportunity to share this moment with all of you. Our dinner this evening will be a moment of grace, warmth and connection, renewed friendships, wonderful food, and vibrant discussion. Cherish that moment, because in our day jobs, in the outside world, things are far more complex and uncertain. And the world is watching you, specifically all of you. Your colleagues are watching you. Your alumni are watching you. Journalists at the Financial Times are watching you. Why? Well, because as you know, in times of crisis, people look for leadership, and in leadership, they look for values. Standing at the front of a room of an AMBA Deans and Directors Conference, what was I thinking to address the room and, smart, thoughtful, brilliant people? Why am I talking to you about values? I was so panicked that I asked my 12-year-old daughter, June Rainbow, to help. She's done a lot of the images, including this one. She actually calculated her carbon footprint for the energy that they required. And she's so intrigued by stakeholder mapping that she's going to take that idea to middle school next week. The legend tells us that George Washington immediately owned up to his father when he damaged the family cherry tree with the axe that his father had given him. It took me a little longer, and in my case, it wasn't an axe. It involved a golf club and a golf ball and a cricket bat, one combination or the other. I've broken windows. I've broken the law. Admittedly, I was with the police at the time, but still, I had their help. I broke my leg, but that was more about now being imbalanced than a loss of values. But I've never broken my promises, and nobody yet has gifted me a $400 million luxury Boeing airplane. We'll see. When I left QS, I was the S of QS and their World University Rankings. Somebody reported on my exasperation with the business practices of the company. None of this puts me on a moral high ground, nor on a moral low ground. I'm not sure we should use any of the lessons from my personal story, but for more than 30 years, I've been working with business schools to raise the visibility of the institution, the research and expertise of their faculty, and the wonderful accomplishments of their students and alumni. Many business schools want to be in the FT, right? And at BlueSky, we achieve that every year. Now, whether it's transformational courses, an ever more diverse student body, sharing the magic of your institutional brand, showcasing innovation, what could be more rewarding? Well, that's a big focus of what we do. But my question to you is, are you sure that you want to be in the FT? Not every story is necessarily the story that you want to see about your institution. Just ask Columbia University, among many others. And if a journalist is looking to provoke a reaction, then their headlines, their word choice, and the narrative might not align with yours. Now, I think anyone in business school accreditation knows exactly what I'm referring to from 2 months ago, but that discussion is for another time and for another place. So I just went with this FT article and wondered what Deloitte thought about it, because they're tied into it with that photograph. Now, whether for the good news to share or the bad news to navigate, a lot of deans are very generous towards me in the trust and openness that we have. Which means that when a dean of a prestigious business school that you all know put out a post on LinkedIn on a Sunday evening to offer their support for tragic events unfolding in the Middle East, the post and its subsequent update 2-3 days later created an unprecedented storm of student outrage. We actually measured from 1 to 6 just how unhappy the alumni were. So we got to work together in complete transparency, a lot of vulnerability, to engage with all of those stakeholder groups. The first week was incredibly hard. I've 25, 30 years in business education. I've never seen anything polarize our community as much as this story did. The first month was extremely stressful, but now over 18 months later, with, to my mind, very sensitive and courageous leadership, the dean and the school have continued the dialogue, and they've never been closer to that same group of stakeholders. That group feels heard, they feel respected. It's not perfect, but it's an awful lot better than it had been. Now, as I said, everyone is watching you. That includes this guy, John Byrne, the creator of the first business school rankings with Business Week in 1988. He's been watching and sharing about business schools ever since. He founded Poets and Quants in 2009, and John and I have been business partners for the last 8 or 9 years, organizing events for MBA and master's programs. John is kind. He's funny. He's really funny. He's charismatic. He's uplifting. And I think that he does more than anybody else to champion business schools and their students. He also knows more about business education than anybody else that I know. But John is a journalist through and through. He wrote 63 cover stories between Bloomberg Businessweek, Fortune, and Forbes magazine. He will go after a story, and he will hold up an unflinching mirror to our schools and our actions. So, if you're a dean thinking about having sex in the woods, you might want to think again. Poets and Quants broke the story about the love life of now a former dean of the Stanford Graduate School of Business, and it is among the most read stories that Poets and Quants has ever published. Why? When the Daily Mail picks up your story, and that story involves racy pictures, then sometimes the old world order can be just as treacherous as the new. So everybody's watching your interviews, your graduation speeches, your social posts, your racy pictures. Well, maybe not the pictures, although I was looking over somebody's shoulder a little earlier at what they were consulting on their phone. That will stay with us in a conversation at dinner tonight. But that is also, ladies and gentlemen, your opportunity. And it's why we're having this brief introductory discussion together this evening. The Dean as a moral compass. My daughter June Rainbow is very, very proud. I'm very proud of June Rainbow for coming up with this slide. I was trying to talk about the role of a dean. I likened it to Brad, the head of the middle school where she is. That, you know, you're not just administrators, you're ethical leaders, you're navigating politics, economics, social expectations, herding cats when it comes to the faculty. And of course, in a world that's shaped by geopolitical conflict and by disinformation and by polarized values, I'm sure that this will be covered in other sessions, your role, the role of the dean, has evolved. And you're no longer just academic leaders. I came up with diplomats, and I also then came up with ethical anchors. And I was thinking, wouldn't it be great, June, if we could find one more word to describe the deans that spells the word dean, and then her middle name is Rainbow, so you can understand the colors on this slide. Of course, you're not only responsible for what you say, but also for what you do not say. So here we are in this evolving world order. I'm going too quick, there we go. AI disruption, nationalism, social division. It's the last session on a Friday, and we're going to go for a lovely dinner, but you know just how long that list is. And these aren't abstracts. These are shaping what we teach, how we lead, the future of our industry and institutions that may fall along the way. Business schools are increasingly politicized spaces. Economic nationalism is changing funding, partnerships, mobility. Social movements have heightened expectations on DEI, ethics, and sustainability. I read that back to myself. Heightened expectations, like it's a good thing. But on either end of the spectrum, it's just expectations in one direction or another. And there's almost this sense that neutrality is no longer an option, and that silence can be complicity. You have a lot to unpack, even in colorful rainbows. So we're thinking about core values of our institutions. These are just 5, and I would love for you to shout out or share others that you feel are integral to who you and your institutions are. Just 5 in this presentation. Academic freedom, so handling censorship, internal resistance, government influence. Things are moving very fast. Research integrity, you're, again, navigating corporate funding, reputational risk. You're all receiving calls from individuals around the world that are looking to relocate to be able to pursue that integrity. I said that there were opportunities as well. For diversity and inclusion, managing backlashes, maintaining meaningful progress. The PhD project, a beautiful project that's been around for 31 years, among other things, has helped an extraordinary number of individuals to complete their PhD, let alone the diversity of backgrounds, and of course now being used as a loophole to attack institutions. Are you going to take sides in a war? Do you comment on this war or this one? Because there are points of conflict all over the world, partnering with institutions in contentious regions, and reputation management, when stakeholders' values collide. And we've all, I'm sure, taught in classes the years it takes to build a reputation and the days, weeks with which it can crumble. Now, with that little lot, I think that a beautiful dinner this evening cannot come too quickly, so don't worry, I'm going to be done soon. But before we head to Charlottenburg, I wanted to run through an overview of a communication toolkit. that hopefully will help us to stay grounded and also to be vocal in our values. So we've got several to get through. A compass, and I talked about you as deans being a compass. The first one is about being anchored, mission-aligned, stakeholder-aware, being transparent and courageous in moments of tension. Your mission, do you actually align with your school values? When did you last look at the mission of the school? I've prepared some slides for a quiz at the end. It was actually just in case nobody asked any questions, and Carolyn said, you were supposed to speak for 35 minutes. But we'll actually see whose missions you think you're looking at. Stakeholders, considering all the voices and not just the loudest in the room. I'm sure you must have learned that when you were at the front of a classroom. That one individual with their arms folded, never seemed to smile, and so quickly they can take all of your attention. You know, people are shouting more and more, literally, capital letters in their tweets. In terms of transparency, communicate early, honestly, and often. We've been approached for something unfolding that I think will be the biggest scandal in business education in the last, when was that Stanford thing? 15 years ago. It's really big. And if the institution just puts its head in the sand, I think that the long-term damage it will do to their reputation, it's one of the biggest higher education institutions in the world, even they will struggle to undo that damage. Big themes. And the idea of being willing to stand alone, well, necessary. It's easy perhaps to think that Harvard has the shoulders, and even as the Harvard University funding story and tax exemptions is unfolding, and they're struggling to undo positions in private equity investments that they made 15 or 20 years ago, I think it has been a prompt, and it's given rise to greater unity. If people hear your voice, people will join you. And look at this community and the level of solidarity that is there. So in terms of our checklist, don't delay, get ahead of that curve. You need to acknowledge whatever is being put in front of you. A journalist needs to be heard and show that you've understood the question. Not having time for journalists gives them the freedom to share the stories that they want, to go onto the internet to find somebody that was shouting and just use their input. So challenging though it is, being engaged, showing action, inviting stakeholders into a meaningful conversation and not just performative words. This is show, not tell. So unfold your arms. Don't run away from that journalist or the people that want to speak with you. But do put together a plan. Let's call it a playbook, a crisis communications playbook. Put together a team. Set aside the time to anticipate rather than react. And if you do that, then the Amber Conference in Berlin will be forever in your hearts. The value of storytelling. It connects your values to real lives. That's often, I think, one of the challenges of mission statements. They look so empty in a vacuum. So promote them within your community and across those stakeholder groups. The middle-aged white dean can only do so much. Is TikTok the best place for those dance routines that he'd promised? Equip your faculty and staff to speak with a unified voice. Engagement with alumni and students. If political movements are looking to ban diversity, equity, and inclusion, that does not prevent you from putting the role models among your students and alumni. So active engagement with those groups. again, that principle, people will forget what you said or what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. Alumni, nothing more powerful to inspire the next generation, considering business school. So across all mediums, and for George Washington, the story was made up. It's actually something that they wanted to portray Washington as a fine figure as he would head to the nation's capital and lead his country. I'm not saying that we should all be making up our stories, but it's certainly something 200 years later that illustrates how powerful storytelling is. And then June Rainbow was intrigued by this last one, how you engage with your stakeholders. Again, that playbook, actually make a matrix. With the school that I was describing, we categorized, I think that it went as far as 6 people with a sense of blind outrage. 3, they were merely angry. And as a consequence, we wrote 243 individual correspondences that placed individuals on that matrix or on that scale, and they felt heard. So tailoring that outreach, and of course your teams have an enormous role to play in all of this. Is this internal versus external? What is internal may well become external, and what that might mean for you. Those that share that vision, those values, and those that you feel are on the edge. And again, these things can shift and move very, very quickly. But ultimately, the moral authority of the Delphine, I don't think Delphine is here. I hope that she doesn't mind putting her on this particular slide. Well, I did it with a profound admiration. It's an admiration that extends to Timo from Alto, Hannah at Manchester Met, Morris at Gibbs, Jose at Porto, Francisco at Inter. It's a very long list. There are so many business school leaders that I admire, and the others I'm just hoping to meet you. But I've included this image of Delphine and this idea of being a value ambassador, both internally and globally. It's a campaign that we did, content that she'd used at a welcome address or at a specific event, that we then translated to where this audience would be watching it. And the TikTok video really is very powerful. Certainly, it's gained a lot of resonance. You cannot outsource integrity. You're at the head of all of this. So, a call to action. Go check out the values of your institution. What does it actually say in the mission statement? Train your leadership team on value-based crisis response so that, again, there is that sense of unity within the organization, and ultimately share stories. Please, this evening at this beautiful dinner, please come and find me and share your stories, and we can take that to a wider audience. That was the Q&A. Carolyn will let me know if we're doing okay, and I do have a quiz in case we don't have any questions from all of you. Your turn. Yes, in the middle. Do we have microphones for? Great, thank you. Just third, fourth one in. I think you've gone too far. Can you put your hand up again, or were you just asking for a drink? No? I may have got it wrong. I apologize.
You mentioned it in your presentation, so what are we going to do about DEI, especially schools that are highly invested in the US or have other accreditations that have shifted their focus in terms of DEI? And what would be your key insights to schools that want to continue with their commitment, want to be value-based with their commitment, but are facing backlashes or potential backlashes to their due to their connections with US schools or US government or whatever.
If we break that down to the institution itself, of course, research, and then, of course, in its recruitment, I think recruitment is the easiest one to begin with. Many of these opportunities, in fact, the rest of the world might be looking and saying, hey, what a golden opportunity for us as these events unfold in the United States. Research is going to take a hit, and I think that many universities, with the sort of funding threats that they have, are going to struggle with that one. But I think that from a media and communications perspective, that's where their communities are part of the key. Because that ultimately, that alum that we were describing as the role model is going to take an even greater impact. And we've seen that individuals, when they share posts on LinkedIn or any of these social channels, will get 15, 20 times more responses than when the institution shares that. So I think in terms of ensuring that level of diversity, there's another hit that I think is being explored right now with the Financial Times. Already you may have seen a drift of US school engagement with the Financial Times over the past 4 or 5 years. We see that in exec ed notably. But increasingly they feel out of sync with the 21 characteristics that are the basis of their methodologies. Now it's been 4 or 5 years that we have had net zero and teaching and carbon footprint. And I think that Andrew, Jack, and Leo have a very delicate discussion with US schools about their inability to provide those responses. That would mean places in the rankings that they don't want to entertain. And I think that there will be some continued vicious circles that will spiral downward.
As I understood, almost every business school is going to have a critical episode or some crisis communication issue. Is almost something like that is well understood that I say?
I like your question. No, I hope that is not the case. I think there's a big chance of it. But every business school should prepare for it. Okay. And when you actually go back to, I thought I was just putting out a post that showed solidarity and community, and the school was swept away with how things responded so quickly. So it's having a plan and a playbook. And then, of course, I wish no crisis. Hi.
Hello, thank you very much. Really enjoyed it. There's an opinion that a university or business school should first think about its reputation and then ranking will come. The other opinion is that you should start building the ranking and it also helps build the reputation. So it's kind of a chicken and egg situation. Please share your views. What should an emerging school should do first?
When you ask those masters, MBA candidates and applicants, what are the qualities, characteristics that are most important for you? Reputation and brand is nearly always higher than the rankings. And yet, the rankings are folded into that reputation. I think there are opportunities for movement in that. As I said, I think US schools may continue to disengage. We've seen it in other fields of medical and law, among others. Own your ranking. I think your emphasis, and we work a lot with schools, there are some simple things that are common sense in rankings. And you don't have to play the system. Ultimately, I think what you're being true to may or may not be rewarded with 50 publications that this media esteems or not. But I think drilling down into rankings, because ultimately salary, there are certain things, certain schools are going to dominate for the rest of yours and my career. I know that you're only 28 years old, but still another 20, 30, 40 years. But finding at a more local and regional level, I think, as you will be discussing in the next 2 days, the impact of AI. And frankly, Harvard and other big business schools are like deer in headlights on this one. I think they're probably looking over the Charles River to see what MIT Sloan is doing in that space. But it will give some extraordinary opportunities for schools to demonstrate that there's somebody sitting in this audience, probably broke fewer windows than I did, but was an ace hacker, including this person's university. The beauty of what emerges there is that when they, as the head of their school, talk about technology, they talk about transformation, the impact of AI, but they do it with this very tangible sense. For you as the individual, we see this uncertainty. Candidates thinking, is Deloitte going to hire anybody 3 years from now? And I think it's making these things accessible, and that goes beyond a ranking. That says, we've ensured that to prepare you for the future of work, locally, regionally, nationally, internationally, do those things well, and I think you'll find an audience. Oh, my quiz. We'll do this very quickly. So it's 4 mission statements. And can anybody, you can just shout them out, a number and a school. Which mission statement? Which school? This is one of the problems with mission statements. We did a survey of 1,200 individuals and embedded in it, the mission statements. There was only there were 2 that people remembered. One from Palo Alto and one from Fontainebleau. But otherwise, people struggled. First one. Actually, I cheated a little bit. Sorry. It talks about global competence. That comes from HKUST and the National University of Singapore. It talks about responsibility and ethics. That comes from AIM in the Philippines and SEABS. Innovation and entrepreneurship, that was the Indian School of Business and again SEABS. And emerging markets, they all talked about this. So this was an AI exercise asking to look at the mission statements of top schools from each region. And what do you get? The second one, that's Europe. The diversity and inclusion is all INSEAD. The responsible leadership, HEC has a shout in that one. The global impact is LBS and IE on societal transformation. Then Africa with ethical leadership from Lagos and Strathmore, innovation and entrepreneurship, inclusive growth from all of those schools, and global standards and local impact from Cape Town and from Gibbs. And then the US schools. The US one looks different from the other 4. I have no doubt about that. Educating leaders, that's all over HBS, of course. Wharton also jumps in, and you've got MIT Sloan. MIT Sloan, interestingly, is the only one that talks about principled and ethical focus, because Harvard, when they talk about educating leaders that will have impact, avoids ever saying whether it's positive or negative impact. Real-world impact and global relevance. So my question to you, now that's one institution. I didn't mix these. Any ideas? It's one of the 3 biggest tobacco firms in the world. I invite you to check your school mission. It's a wonderful team exercise, and it can extend to other stakeholders. I think some really interesting discussions emerge, and I look forward to some really interesting discussions at dinner with everybody tonight. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Carolyn.